welcome to this edition of Faith and the Common Good. I'm your host, Pastor Harris, representing North Coast United Methodist Church. We're so pleased to come to you in this format, offering an opportunity to discuss issues that are relevant to our common life together, as we all seek to lift up and support the common good. There are many issues around us that affect us directly as well as indirectly. And so we, in this format, attempt to lift up those concerns, lift up those issues, and have conversations that perhaps others are not having. And in that way, provide a way for us to see what's going on in our community, especially through the lens of faith and how faith affects us in our common life together. In these first few moments, I want to remind us that North County is not isolated from the incidences and the activities that occur around us. As of this date of taping, we are only 2 days away from the incidences in Anaheim, where violence has been once more the issue related to matters of relationship among persons of different perspective, perhaps even different races, perhaps even different understandings altogether. And so we cannot avoid the fact that an issue related to such a concern that continues to perpetuate itself from generation to generation still exists among us, namely KKK in the city of Anaheim and the responses thereto. We are those who live anticipating that one day we will all be able to live together despite our differences of opinion. Never is there a call for us to all be the same. I don't think that God has intended for all of us to be the same, but I do believe it is possible, and I do believe that God hopes that we are able to be in conversation with one another. And so that conversation should move us beyond our differences to a place of relationship where we are able to hear one another, where we are able to see one another, and where we are able to be responsive to one another in spite of where we may be, either politically or with regard to our faith or with regard to our absence of faith even. We should be able to move beyond our tolerance of one another and move into a place of understanding. And that understanding only comes when we're able to sit down and reason with one another, to listen to one another, and then grow in an ability to ask questions of one another. Will we ever be able to agree? I don't know. But what I do know is that it is possible to come to a place where we can at least sit and be in the same space without violence, without name calling, without any sense of angst because of the way we are and how we are in the world. Now, relative to our current events, certainly our political environment is such that causes us challenge, especially as we think toward this notion of being able to reason together. And so we challenge our political environments, whether they be national, whether they be state, or whether they be local, to look toward our ability to think together. It is in our thinking together that our problems are solved. It is in our thinking together that we are able to move into a new understanding of our possibilities. Not just a possibility for some, not just a possibility that's related to whatever sense of entitlement we may feel, or perhaps have perceptions about having, but it's also our possibility to imagine a new future together where all have the opportunity to reach their full potential, whether it be a child, whether it be a senior citizen, whether it be those who are working day to day, whatever the case may be. Through the course of our next few conversations with one another, we hope to be in dialogue about some of these critical issues, and we certainly invite you to be a part of that dialogue with us. Our young people are impassioned, our young people are active, but I would ask our young people to be more aware and to be grounded not only in the present, but also to be grounded in an historical sense that enables the futuring of their desires to not be stuck in historical place, but to be built upon the processes that have built up advancements from our historical understandings. I would also also call our young people to lead us, where we are listening to their voices and to their passions in such a way that we are not momentarily focused on a single issue, but we are all working together to resolve the next concerns as even we speak to and attempt to resolve the concerns of the present. We have much work to do. What do we say of our community? Is our community polarized? Is our community siloed? Are there voices that are not being heard that could be given voice, that could organize in such a way that their voices are heard from their own perspective rather than being influenced by the voices that surround them? And then what do we see as our better? We look at the nation, we look at our local environment, and we, from the local place, can then forward our thoughts, our ideas, our concerns, our hopes, and our dreams to other levels so that our entire nation and even the world is impacted by what we see as a place where we can be better. We can move from those silos. We can move from those places of individual thought and move more directly and more confirmed in how we together are able to speak to our common good. In essence, that's what we want to talk about, and that's what we want to hear from you. Dialogue with us about ways that we can be together in how we talk together, how we see one another together, and how we dream together for a tomorrow that's better for us all. In just a few minutes, we'll have conversation with one of our organizations addressing matters of the poor and the working poor in our community, and we invite you to return to hear that conversation. Please stay tuned.
This is Zoe. She's 1, and she's running for president, potentially in 2064. Because if she's kept safe and eats well, has the opportunity to learn and grow, if she has help getting ahead and support along the way, then Zoe could be president. Like her hero, Ababam Binkin. Help kids like Zoe dream big. The why, for early learning, childcare, mentorship, and more. For a better us. Donate to the Y at zoeforpresident.net.
Will spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
Welcome back to this segment of Faith and the Common Good. We are having conversation, this second segment, with Pastor Steve Bassett, who is the Executive Director of the Bread of Life Ministries here in the city of Oceanside. And one of the ways that the Bread of Life mission supports our city is by providing services and support to the poor and to the working poor. And so we're so happy to be able to welcome Pastor Steve to the conversation. Thank you, Pastor Steve, for joining us, and we look forward to our time together, hearing a little bit about your organization, and then deepening our conversation with other questions. So, as you will, please, would you just offer us a brief overview of what Bread of Life Ministries does?
Yeah. Bread of Life has been working in the community of Oceanside since 2002. We opened up and started out small and went from a little soup kitchen and a small shelter, winter shelter program. We've expanded from that. Now we're part of a cooperative group here in North County the Alliance for Change here in Oceanside and North County, and there's 4 major winter shelters involved, 2 rotating shelters that go to churches. We have a huge food bank. Our soup kitchen is still operating, and our shelter goes from the 1st of December till the end of March, and we house 50 people, 18 women, and 32 men. They're all singles at our shelter, and we case manage them for 4 months.
You offer a broad variety of interconnected services, and it must be quite a bit of challenge as well as reward to be in service in that way. So could you share with me then why you individually are involved in such a ministry?
Well, I feel the calling of the Lord, to be doing that. Number one, I was called into ministry in 1993 in prisons and institutions and jails, and went from there. And the Lord called me, took me from that, and I went to seminary. Came down to San Diego. That's how I got involved with Bread of Life. Me and my wife got involved as volunteers with Bread of Life while I was in seminary. And I did a lot of my, programming practicums from seminary there, and just loved what the Lord was doing there. And so eventually, after I graduated, a job finished up that we were working on to support us, and we became full-time at Bread of Life. And then later on, a couple of years later, I was elected executive director of Bread of Life. And so it's really been just a real involvement, and your heart goes out to the needs of the community.
Sure,
you see so many people with needs,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we speak of those needs, are you, in the time that you have been in Oceanside, are you seeing an uptick in those needs, or more concentration of the areas of need? How would you describe what you're seeing as both need and the trends that are happening?
Well, the needs, one, we've seen people that are homeless, number one, and people that are, what we call the working poor, that are challenged by the cost of living in an area like North County, like Oceanside. That's been a real challenge. It still is today with some of the programs, getting people into housing. The job market, as usual, is up and down, but people are able to get work. We see a lot more hunger, I think. We've noticed since we've opened our food banks, probably been in operation it started probably about 8 years ago, real small, and it's evolved into a huge, we have a van that travels all over North County picking up food. We bring it in. Our food pantry is open from 9 to 12, Monday through Friday, and then we have a couple of opportunities to distribute food with the San Diego Food Bank and Feeding America San Diego twice a month. So we just see an enormous amount of needs, families and seniors and people on disabilities that can't get into the federal food program. So we're able to subsidize and help these people survive.
So what requirements do you have for those seeking help through Bread of Life?
We do an intake program where, it's kind of on the honor system. We don't really have them bring tax forms or anything, but majority of them are good, honest people that are, seniors that don't get any money. They're on a low income, or people with mental or physical disabilities, and just, the homeless people that come in town and they're sleeping in their car and they need a box of food to get them and their family by until they can figure out where they're going to land and where they're going to live, So that's a big part of it that we see.
Sure. Looking at both ends of the spectrum of need, children and seniors, whom we might consider to be the more vulnerable prospects for your services. Do you have any stories of transformation, how your ministry has done that very thing, helped one get from this point to the next point?
Well, yeah, there's, when I think of stories, there's so many. I mean, I could write a book on it. Someday I may.
I hope you do.
But one story that really intrigued me, and I had the gentleman come back with his wife and give a testimony. It was a husband and wife, and they both were addicted to heroin. They were living in a tent, not far from Bread of Life, up in the kind of the foothills area. And they came to Bread of Life, and we ministered to them. They made the change. They went and got help. They got healed up. They already had, their husband and wife, they already had 2 kids. They got life in order, got their kids back. He went to work, she went to work part-time, and then they had a 3rd child, and they're doing very well today. And he came back and said he didn't know how they would do that without having the help and the support and the prayer and the counseling that Bread of Life had. And so there's a lot of stories like that where you have people that are displaced, whether it's an addiction or whether it's just somebody going through some life trials. You know, we're there, we're very supportive, and we help people. We're there to help people. That's what we do.
Why the name Bread of Life?
Well, the Bread of Life basically it's when the Lord speaks in the New Testament, he talks about Jesus himself is the bread of life, and that's what we feel like. We're the hands, the feet, the heart, the soul of the Lord, reaching out to the community. That's what we've been. We have great church service at every meal at Bread of Life in our soup kitchen. We have a church on Sunday morning, and we do share the gospel with the folks that come in. And then when we do our shelter, it becomes a shelter, and because we're involved with the city and we get some money from city and the feds, then it becomes Bread of Life Shelter, and there's gospel if they want to do it on their own, but there's no requirement of the gospel. So we're able to do the church and state thing, and it works very well with what we do.
Very good, very good. So what I'm hearing then is that support to those who are in those intermediary states of need, meaning they just need something to help them get to the next juncture. Also, you offer mental health services that will be a little more depthful way to support, so identifying the immediate but looking also to the long term. Is there another way that you offer impact?
Well, I think the impact is that we're corporately, let's say, as one of the people in the cooperative, we have a program that came down. It's kind of edged down from downtown San Diego. It's a HUD program. It was called 25 Cities. They've since changed the name, but it's a program that is developing ways and means to get people off the streets into housing. Their main focus is veterans, and then they have a way of numbering, you know, the highest and the lowest. The veterans are on top, and then it goes down to the needs, whether it's a family and what the needs are. But that program is really starting to work. The big bottleneck there is we're trying to get landlords that'll take these federal vouchers and bring people in, because we're able to get the help, but we need to open the door up for housing.
Sure. So this is different from a Section 8 voucher. It's specific to the issue of...
Yeah, it's from the HUD. I'm not sure if they call it actually a Section 8. They call it a voucher, and we've had people get placed, and it's worked real well, but the problem is there's not that many landlords that'll take it, because we know the medium level of housing is a little bit higher in North County, San Diego.
So the alliances that are working around the particular issue of homelessness, and we can separate the issue of homelessness and food insecurity, although they are certainly related one to the other. But on the issue of homelessness, there is a county strategic initiative, and of the organizations that are a part of that initiative, are you seeing any possibility of there ever being a day when we can say there is no homelessness in San Diego County, North County in particular?
Yes, I really feel that there can come a day when, with what we have in the cooperative with the cities, we now have in North County, we have shelters that are going year-round. The family shelter in Vista next year is going year-round, so they're going to be a year-round program. The Haven House in Escondido, which is part of Interfaith, they're now year-round. Okay, we have La Posada Guadalupe in Carlsbad, they're year-round. So now our hope and our dream is that we'll have Bread of Life as a year-round shelter. So we'll have enough shelter year-round to bring these folks in and get them into these different programs and be able to, you know, somebody shows up and they're homeless, somebody like the Oceanside Hot Team or somebody can refer them, they'll come to a shelter wherever they're at. They'll get help, and they'll transition from that shelter into transitional housing, and then into a housing program and work and all that stuff. So that's the dream we have,
Sure.
and we're working on it.
So developing those strategic and
Sure.
progressive partnerships. One enables shelter for a short term or for at least a year. Another enables not only mental health but job preparation and placement. Another enables home security, whether that's temporary housing, looking toward the possibility of long-term housing that is both sustainable as well as practical and able to comply with the resources that someone might have. Let's talk about the face of homelessness for a minute, because still, in spite of all of the new information, especially in this area, we do have the shelter Operation Hope and Vista. We have the Interfaith Rotational Shelter Program, wherein churches participate for 2 weeks at a time in housing. But many places still see homelessness as a service to those who are lazy, or those who are on the dregs of society, or those who just don't have the will to do something else. Let's correct that information. Let's talk about what the real face of homelessness is.
Yeah, I think in any community, any situation, there are going to be people that are, let's say, obstinate to a shelter program that puts pretty much a stipulation on what they do. In other words, when they come into any of our shelters, they're case managed. They have certain things that they have to do. If they're willing, if the person is willing, they will get help. And that's the same in any community in America, I think. But the neat thing about it is that we do have the ability to do that. And I think that face is kind of falsely, because you'll have people, whether they're homeless or not, they could be living in a home, they could be on a substance, they could be, getting in trouble and creating, havoc in a community. But if they're willing to change, we have all the resources from, the drug program, mental health, health programs, all that stuff. We have all that in place. All they have to do is come in and be willing to make the transition, and we are there to help them.
Sure.
And that's what it's all about.
Sure. I pastor a church that participates in the rotational shelter program, and the discoveries in that process are that we're not just talking about adults, we're talking about families, sometimes 2 generations of families who are without housing. And many of them come and they leave every morning during their time in the shelter to go to a job, and they come back at night to the shelter because they don't make enough money to sustain housing.
Right.
So we could have a conversation about affordable housing, but more, we probably should have conversations about why it is that, in spite of the services that are available, there could be an observation that homelessness, particularly for those who are classified as working poor, is on the increase rather than on the decrease. So in your experience, what are you seeing happening around that sense of people who have capacity, who have strength in their ability to find a job and keep a job, but are just not making enough money to take care of themselves?
Yeah, we see number one, we'll see the fact that they are not making enough money. They don't make enough salary to do it. The other thing is that they have a situation where they hit a bump in the road, like they're working for a company. The company says, "Oh, work is slow. We got to lay you off for a couple of months." They lay somebody off, and they're going paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of them will come to us and go, "I haven't been here in 6 months, but can I get some food? Because if I don't get any food, I can't pay my rent." And so it's that close, and I think that a lot of us, even myself, I've had situations where Bread of Life hasn't had money, and I've had to go and be laid off and go on unemployment. And it really makes us dip into whatever we have saved for that rainy day, and it's not easy. And it's the same for everybody out there. They're in the same boat. So it strikes home just like it strikes out there. And I think that's the whole deal. It's just very, very hard, where if they're at a level and they can get a little bit of subsidy on their housing so they can make ends meet, come to Bread of Life, get some food, everything will work out fine, and we'll build on that and counsel on that. That's what
We
we
could
do.
probably spend another conversation about the psychological issues that are
Oh, yeah.
related to homelessness
yeah.
and food insecurity and all those things that affect not only children and seniors, but also those in the in-between years as well. And perhaps we'll do that just to address the observation and the reality that even if there is resource, the psychological deficit that happens in that process of moving from a place of need to a place of security is very impactful.
Yes.
In these last few minutes, I'd like you to share with us how we might help as a community surrounding Bread of Life, both Oceanside as well as the Tri-City area and beyond. How might someone help Bread of Life?
Yeah. I think the main thing is, as far as getting involved, I'd love people to go to our website, which is bolrescue.org. Go there and hit our Gmail, which is bolrescue@gmail.com, and just shoot us an email and let us know what kind of time they have. Just send us an email, tell us what they got going on. We'd love to get them involved. The other thing would be, people can donate to our pantry. Canned food is really big. Dry goods is really big. The other part of it is supporting Bread of Life and supporting what we do and what we're trying to build on for the future. Because we're, like I say, we're month to month like everybody else, and it's always a challenge as we come out of this winter season. So.
Well, thank you, Pastor Steve, for joining us in this conversation, and we are looking forward to our next conversation and opportunity to be in partnership with you. There are so many issues that affect us as city, as county, as nation, and it takes all of us together to work toward resolutions to those concerns. And we are listening now to Bread of Life Ministries and the similar organizations that support matters of the poor and the working poor, and particularly housing and food insecurity. We are certainly in dire need of finding a solution so that no longer do we have to talk about the ways in which the absence of resource affects so many among us. That is why we talk about the common good and what we can do to ensure that our lives together are better, remembering that we indeed are better together than we are apart. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Faith and the Common Good, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, and God bless.